like we have to understand that our children, like one of the things that's been really hard looking back on COVID for me is I teach kids. I teach a lot of special needs kids. I teach children. And in our county, all of our test scores tanked. Like my kids' school went from a 9.5 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10 in that 2-year span of their testing. Most of the kids are now reading 3 grade levels below when they were at level at the time that the pandemic began, right? But one of the things that has been striking is that what we have done is conditioned this entire younger side of the generation that's come up through this to lose their ability to think imaginatively, which doesn't seem like a big deal if you're like, oh, they can't pretend to be a fireman or a police officer, right? But it is a very big deal if you need them to creatively problem solve or innovate. We have literally stunted the ability to innovate because we taught them everything was real. Everything. We taught kids that if you touch your friend, you could die. And if you don't scrub your hands, you could get sick and you could make your grandma die. And if you like breach these protocols, we damaged children in ways that we will not fully see fleshed out for decades, but it will be long-term, like it's going to be catastrophic.
So we had a caller on the Uncensored Call-In show who made a really interesting point about autism rates in kids because RFK Jr. has been talking about this massive spike. And I'm going to paraphrase the general idea because the idea was that what we perceive to be autism in young people today may actually be developmental disabilities caused by tablets. And some people instantly said, BS, there are kids that are 1 or 2 that are showing autism symptoms. So I want to clarify this, but I do think it's important to talk about. We're seeing a massive uptick in autism diagnoses now among very young people, children, over the past 10 years. And while I do think a lot of it is regular old autism, I also think some of it may be developmental disabilities caused by children being handed tablets. And so the idea is basically this. A kid is 1 and cries. How do humans handle that? The human talks to the kid. Yeah, don't shake your babies.
Oh.
That's coming from a cop who said that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But we largely will talk to the kid, right? So I have a new baby cries, and my wife is saying, like, what do you want? I just fed you, and interacting in a normal human way. Parents now put a tablet in front of the kid or the baby and press play. That is not a normal social interaction. So what then happens is, in the most formative years of a human's life, when the neural pathways are being built around how a human needs to interact, they've replaced human social interaction with auto-played videos. What do you get? A child that is dissociative, antisocial, that may be similar to autism symptoms that is being diagnosed as it, but it could be technology causing this.
Well, and during COVID, we had kids looking at screens for the full day, for like 6 hours a day, and that's all they had. The other thing you were mentioning, what was going on during COVID with education, and the other thing we taught our kids during that time is that education doesn't matter. Right? So it's very hard to pull kids back and say, now it matters what your grades are. Now it matters that you show up for school, even though during COVID, if you were around, this was in Brooklyn, New York, if you were around someone who had COVID, you couldn't go to school for 2 weeks. So we already taught them that education is bogus, that it doesn't matter if you go to school, that it doesn't matter if you learn anything, because they weren't learning anything on the Chromebooks that got sent home. And so now how do you tell a kid who's entering high school, now education matters, even though we have destroyed your education from 4th grade to the present?
And you use the word stunted for this mental, cognitive, and emotional development.
Yes.
And not only might that be possible, it literally has to be possible.
It has to be.
It has to have happened, because if you took these same children, the same ages, and you put them on a starvation diet for 18 months, they would not physically develop correctly, and they would never get that growth back. You can't get it back. We all know we learn things best at certain ages. And once you've lost that opportunity, you can't teach someone how to read or think or relate in the same way ever again. It's gone forever.
It's I started a new small business because I was so concerned, because one of the things that we saw consistently across all of the drop test scores was this creative problem solving, creative thinking had dropped almost to nothing in all of the kids that were like 1 to 2 all the way up through like 8. And so I built this imagination play center. They can pretend to be a police officer. They can pretend to be a camper. They can pretend to be at a grocery store, whatever, right? I wanted to give that back to my community because everything went out of business during COVID. We lost 37 children's businesses in my small town during COVID. We were one of the only ones that survived. So I built it, and we built it for 8 and under, thinking that was the age I could still impact. I actually thought that was the only age we could help. So we said 8 and under when we opened. Then the first week, my daughter, who's 12, had all her little friends roaming the mall because it's in a shopping mall. They were all out in a pack, and she comes to me and she says, Mom, on her walkie-talkie, and she says, Mom, can we come hang out at the Grove? And I'm like, yeah, but you guys are kind of old, and you know my tech rule. It's no tech in here, so your friends will have to hand over their cell phones. She says, that's okay. These 12 and 13-year-olds come in. They give me all their cell phones, and like 9 of them go into my little doctor's office, my little bakery, my little grocery store. They spend about 1 minute afraid someone's going to make fun of them. And then they spent the next 6 hours just pretending. And I asked them at the end to come sit with me and tell me like what they thought, why it was fun. And they said they stole this from us. We didn't have any of this. I want to do this. This was fun. We never got to do this. This age group that was supposed to be learning to use their imaginations and develop innovation and flourish, we denied that to them. And this is not, in my opinion, a partisan issue. Every parent in America knows what we did in this regard. This is not a partisan issue. I see it everywhere. I see it with every age of kid from like 14 on down. I see the high schoolers in a different way. We're stunted socially. There's a lot more anxiety, right? We see these problems, but for the young kids up to that like tween age, they were denied the ability to develop the type of imagination skills necessary to innovate. And as a country, we will pay for that.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.